Brother Brandon Judah McDuffie, representing the Solid Foundation International Ministries. That's Solid Foundation International Ministries. This is a short lesson on today concerning the truth on Thanksgiving. Let's get into it, okay? Now, we know that the Pilgrims came to the Americas in what year? 1620s, the 16th century. This is when the Pilgrims came to America and they decided that they would make the New World, the Americas, an extension of Europe, okay? They came here in the 1620s, all right? And we're going to give you scripture concerning that, because your Bible, you so-called Negroes and Hispanics and Native Indians, you are the Israelites that the Bible speaks of, okay? You are the lost tribes of Israel, God's chosen people, special people above every nation that is in the earth. You are God's chosen people. No one else. Negroes, Hispanics, Native Indians. You are the Israelites, alright? And let's talk about, we basically talking about the origin of Thanksgiving. So in the 1620s, the Spanish conquistadors, the British Puritans, Pilgrims, and American settlers came to the New World. Why would they come to the New World? They came to the New World to basically they decided that they was going to make this land an extension of Europe, okay? And you know, before they got here, it was Indians that was residing on the land, okay? Now, this is a short lesson concerning Thanksgiving. Now, I'm not doing any major breakdowns, but I'm going through this as quick as possible. If you want to know how did the Indians get to the Americas, how did the Indians get over here in the first place? If you want to know about that, I recommend you to get you a apocryphal book. Okay, get you the apocryphal books. All right. They are the 14 books that the Roman Catholic Church took out the Bible. I'm going to write this down here so you can see it. I don't know if you can see it. You want to get these books. It's called the Apocrypha, okay? This was part of the first original King James edition, 1611 edition. The first Bible that came to the Americas had the apocryphal books in it. Okay, but during the 18th century, the Catholic Protestants took out the apocryphal books from the King James. Why? Because it had so much information concerning history. It had so much information. It had 300 to 400 years of historical events concerning the Bible that would clear up a lot of things, okay? But in order for the so-called white man to teach you his damn lies, he would have to remove these books from the Bible. So he removed these books from the King James 1611 edition in the year the 18th century, the 1800s. And 20 years later, he gave you another Bible. So now the Bible that we read today has 39 books in the Old Testament, 27 books in the New Testament. When the original Bible had 39 books in the Old Testament, 14 apocryphal books, and then your 27 books in the New Testament. So thanks to the Catholic Protestants, thanks to the Roman Catholic Church, they took out 14 books from the original King James, the apocryphal books, okay? And one of these books I want you to focus on if you want to understand how the Native Indians came to the New World is the 2nd Ezra 13. Okay, so just remember this. 2nd Ezra, all right? Ezra was a prophet of the Most High. 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, because this is critical information. All right, 2nd Ezra chapter 13, beginning with the 39th verse, stopping on the 45th verse. 2nd Ezra 13, 39, stopping on the 45th verse, explains how after the Assyrian captivity by the hands of Shalmaneser in 721 BC, the northern kingdom fell. All right, and King Shalmaneser took the northern kingdom into the Assyrian captivity. 3 years, the northern kingdom of Israel, which is the kingdom of Ephraim, primarily the Indian tribes, after those 3 years, they took counsel among themselves to settle to a new land. And they came basically through the Persian Gulf. And they settled through the Persian Gulf. They went down on the east coast of Africa, under Africa, and settled all the way to the New World, which is Osiric, the original name of this land, which today they call it the Americas. And it explains how the Indian tribes migrated to America, and this is why exactly the Roman Catholic Church removed the 14 books from their Bible, because he did not want you to know that the Indians, the natives, they are the children of Israel. Okay, he didn't want you to know that. So just remember, if you want to find out how did the natives migrate to the New World, because they didn't go through the Bering Straits. That's a lie that they teach you in the school. Bering Straits is extremely cold, way too cold for natives to settle and go through the Bering Straits. That did not happen. They went through the Persian Gulf concerning 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, 39 verse, stopping on the 45th verse, and where can 2nd Ezra be found at? Okay, the Apocryphal books, 14 books. Just get these books. You can buy them separately, or you can just buy the whole King James 1611 edition with these books in it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Alright, so this is the real story of Thanksgiving. I'm just going over some pinpoints to let you see. Okay, let's go to Deuteronomy 28 and 49. Deuteronomy 28, 49. We're going to Deuteronomy, all right? 28 and the 49th verse. We're going to go into that, because Deuteronomy, basically, Deuteronomy chapter 28 is talking about curses that came on the nation of Israel. Now, if you will begin from Deuteronomy the 15th verse in the 28th chapter, it'll tell you basically what will happen to the nation of Israel for their disobedience. Alright? Just regard the ringing of the phone. But let's start with Deuteronomy 28, 49 verse. It says, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, okay? So in Deuteronomy chapter 28, 49, it said that the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, okay? As swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Why? Because after the children of Israel settled into the land of Canaan, the Most High laid out laws, statutes, and commandments to Moses to give to the children of Israel. And he told them if they start screwing up in the land of Canaan, if they start acting the ass and screwing up and start breaking his commandments, that he will punish them, man. That he was going to punish the children of Israel. That basically in a latter time, later on down the line, Deuteronomy 28:48 says that the Lord shall bring a nation against thee. What is he talking about? He's talking about the Indian tribes, man. Also the Negro tribes, but we're focusing on the Indian tribes today, which are the northern kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Ephraim. He told them that he was seeing a nation against them far from the end of the earth. That's talking about the Europeans, man. The ends of the earth is known as the Eastern Hemisphere. And they came Basically, who came from the Eastern Hemisphere? Spanish conquistadors, British Puritans, Pilgrims, and American settlers came from the East, all right? The Eastern Hemisphere to the West, and raped, robbed, and murdered 700 to 100 million indigenous people, man. And claim this land as their own. That's your Thanksgiving. Because every time they would hack an Indian up, every time they would cut the Indian throats, slit their throats, rape their women, bash their baby heads against the rocks, rip pregnant women, children from their womb, they would hold a feast called Thanksgiving, man. And who did that? The governor of Massachusetts Bay. Every time the Indians were slaughtered, they would hold a feast called Thanksgiving, and they would give thanks for the death of the indigenous people. Okay? And they did it so much. I'm not going to go into all the atrocities were committed against these people, because we know that it was Indians that was clubbed to death. They was burned alive. They was strangled, they was hacked to pieces, their hands was hacked off, their feet, their legs, and so forth. Their woman was raped, and a lot of gruesome things happened to the indigenous people, which are the natives, which are the Israelites. By you so-called white folk, you gonna pay for that, man, because it has not been justice served. And you have to pay for that, man. Okay? But anyways, we're not gonna go into all the atrocities that was committed against these people. But the killings became more, basically, so gruesome within days of Thanksgiving feasts that was held after every successful slaughter, after every successful massacre. Every time an Indian was killed, these goddamn white folk, Puritans, okay, Pilgrims, American settlers, would start giving thanks over the dead corpses of these Indians. They did it so much that George Washington, he finally decided that only one day of Thanksgiving should be done. Not every time you slaughter an Indian. So what he did, he said, only I think one time Thanksgiving should be celebrated, not after every death. You Europeans, you white folk, which he was white himself. Don't do it every time you kill an Indian. Just do it once out the year. Abraham Lincoln decreed Thanksgiving Day as a national holiday. He legalized it as a national holiday during the Civil War. All right, knowing damn well what Thanksgiving was all about. Thanksgiving, giving thanks over the slaughter of 700 million to 100 million. Well, 700 to 100 million indigenous people. That's what they gave thanks over, man. Abraham Lincoln knew this. At the same time, basically, he ordered troops to march against the Sioux Indians in Minnesota because he was guilty. Abraham Lincoln was also guilty of hanging 38 Sioux Indians in Minnesota. Okay? So they knew goddamn well what Thanksgiving was all about, man. They just lied to your children that it's all about Pilgrims and Indians sitting down together celebrating. That's not true, man. Alright? So they came from the East. Them Europeans, they came from the East. Now we're going into the book of Habakkuk. Some may say Habakkuk. We're going into the book of Habakkuk, Habakkuk, that some may say. And let's look at Habakkuk 2, chapter 2, verse 12. Okay. So we went over Deuteronomy 28:49, how he will send a nation from the end of the earth to the indigenous people. And now we are going over Habakkuk. Okay? 2 and 12. So now we're going over Habakkuk 2 and 12. And this is what it reads. Woe unto him that buildeth a town with blood and established a city by iniquity. So the Most High Yahweh, woe means destruction. He said destruction to him that buildeth a town with blood. Now he didn't give specific people or a name because we know who did this, man. We know you goddamn white folks, you damn devils that the Bible speaks of. We know that you built this town with blood and established this city by sin and transgression. We know that you Europeans did that, man. And we as Hebrew Israelites, Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Indians, we ain't celebrating that, man. Alright? We not celebrating that shit, man. Alright? Because we know the true origin of it, man. Once you get understanding and know these things, you will stop being ignorant. Alright? So he said, woe to him that buildeth a town with blood. Because this is how America was established. By bloodshed. It was established by rape, rob, and murder of the indigenous people. The natives, which are the children of Israel. That's how it was established, by blood, sweat, and tears. You Spanish conquistadors and British Puritans and Pilgrims and American settlers. You established this country with blood, and you got blood on your damn hands that you can't wash off. Your debt is too big to pay. And the Most High is going to punish you European people, man. Yes, that's right. All of you white folk will be slaughtered by the edge of the sword, man. It's in the scriptures. It's in Obadiah. It's in Isaiah 34th chapter. It's in Isaiah 14, 21st verse. Isaiah 14, 21st verse. Talking about you white folk, man. You're going to be slaughtered because you built a town with blood and established a city by iniquity. That's your Thanksgiving, man. You black folks need to wake the hell up and understand your history, understand what's going on. It's nothing thankful. It's nothing thankful about Thanksgiving. And there's nothing happy about Thanksgiving, because a lot of people say happy Thanksgiving. There's not nothing happy about Thanksgiving. It should be sad Thanksgiving. This is when our brothers and sisters was murdered. This is when our brothers and sisters from the tribe of Gad, the North American Indians, was raped, robbed, and murdered, burned alive. The North American Indians from the tribe of Gad and the other Indians, Seminole Indians, which are the Reubenites, Taino Indians, which are the Ephraimites, which are the so-called Puerto Ricans today, okay, and other Indian tribes, man, that was slaughtered like sheep by these white folk, man. That's your Thanksgiving. So Habakkuk 2 and 12 tell you, woe to him that build a town with blood. And that's exactly why red is in the color of the flag, because that red in the American flag represents the innocent blood of the natives that was shed. And And at Thanksgiving, when you be having when you basically want to celebrate Thanksgiving, and then they have the feast, that cranberry sauce also represents the Native American bloodshed. All right. It represents the shedding blood of the innocent Native Americans, men, women, infant, and children that were slaughtered by the European pilgrims. That's what your cranberry sauce represents. You want to know what the turkey represents? It represents the Native Americans, men, women, infants, and children. It represents when the colonists, the European colonists, slaughtered and celebrated the natives' death. That turkey that's being split down the middle represents the Native Indians, the indigenous people. What the stuffing represents? The stuffing represents unspeakable atrocities. It represents the infant children torn from pregnant native mother's womb that pilgrims murdered and tortured and killed, man. So Thanksgiving was not established by no Indians, man. It was established by you white folk by giving praise and honor and adulation for killing 700 to 100 million indigenous people. You're going to pay for that, man. Let's look at Habakkuk, chapter 1. Now we're in chapter 1 on Habakkuk. Same book, chapter 1. Let's look at verse 8. Habakkuk 1 and 8. It says, their horses are swifter than leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from afar, and they shall fly as the eagle that hastens to eat. So it says that these horsemen shall come from afar. What else said that? Deuteronomy 28:49. Okay? Remember in Deuteronomy 28:49, the nation, swift as the eagle, shall come. Habakkuk 1 verse 8 says, horsemen shall come from afar. From where? Europe. You white folk. You Spanish conquistadors, British Puritans, you pilgrims and American settlers. You shall come from afar, from the eastern hemisphere to the western hemisphere. As they shall fly as the eagle. Because the Spaniards, conquistadors, British, the pilgrims, the American settlers, they use the eagle as their symbol of power. You white folks use the eagle as your symbol of power. And I can see you have not stopped. And to this day, you still use the eagle to this day as your symbol of power. The eagle on the back of the dollar, the eagle on the back of the quarter, the eagle on the side of the post truck, and etc. Let's talk about you white folk. Alright? Verse 9. Okay? Verse 9. Okay? Habakkuk chapter 1 and 9. They shall come for violence. Their faces shall soar up as the east wind. The east wind is Europe, because they came from the eastern hemisphere. And they shall gather the captivity as the sand. And who are the people that they gather in captivity? You so-called Native Indians. You Hispanics, man. They gathered you guys up in captivity. They came as the east wind, Europe. Habakkuk 1 and 9. They shall come for violence. Their faces shall soar up. Because who came for violence? The so-called white man came for violence when he come over here. He had violence in his heart. He came for violence. He had on his mind that he was going to conquer this land, that he was going to take it in his possession, that he was going to steal the wealth, that he was going to rape, rob, and murder the indigenous people. He had that in his mind. So they shall come for violence. That's what you white folks did. That's what you Spanish conquistadors, you British Puritans, you pilgrims and American settlers. You came for violence. Their faces shall soar up as the east wind. You came from the east wind. Europe, the eastern hemisphere, by boat to the Western Hemisphere, killing millions of indigenous people. And they shall gather the captivity as the sand. What does that mean? We in Habakkuk 1 and 9. They shall gather the captivity as the sand. Yeah, because you killed a lot of indigenous people, you white folk. And the ones that were left over, you put on slave boat and took back to Spain as slaves. Now you're wondering why the Hispanics speak Spanish. Because their slave master, the Spaniards, spoke Spanish. And they grew up as slaves in that land speaking Spanish. That's why it says, their faces shall soar up as the east wind. East wind is Europe. They shall gather the captivity as the sand. The captivity talking about, they shall gather indigenous people. The native Indians, which are the Israelites, the slaves, sending them back to Spain. Verse 10 out of Habakkuk chapter 1. And they shall scoff at the kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them, and they shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. So when it says they shall scoff at the kings, that's basically talking about how they would make fun of the chiefs over the Indian tribes. The chiefs that they murdered and decapitated and placed their heads upon stakes and poles, man. They shall scoff at the kings, make fun of the chiefs before they would die at the hands of the white man. And they shall eat dust. What that means? Confusion. Give them religions, because the white folks came over here as Christians. Just like the Crusades in the East was trying to force Christianity upon everyone with the sword, they came over here, these white folks, these Puritans, these Pilgrims, these Spanish conquistadors, with this goddamn Christianity, man. Because we ain't Christians, we Hebrew Israelites, just like the natives. And they came over here with Christianity, and they started forcing Christianity upon them. And the ones that rejected it, they were murdered, man. And that's what it means when it says they shall eat dust. They shall come over here with confusions in religions and force it upon the indigenous people. And whoever didn't accept their new religion, Christianity, started by the Roman Catholic Church, passed down to the Crusades, to you Spanish conquistadors and British Puritans and Pilgrims and American settlers, that brought this shit over here to the New World and tried to apply it to the Indians. That's why they was dying too, because they wasn't accepting Christianity. And you church folk want to call yourself Christians. You better do your research, man. That's what it means, they shall eat dust and take it. Verse 11 out of Habakkuk chapter 1. Then shall his mind change. He shall pass over and offend, imputing this his power unto God. It says, then shall his mind change. Because the white man understands, in order for this to be a one world government, his mind has to change. In order for him to get all nationality people, to get all nations of people here, his mind has to change. He can't keep murder on his mind. His mind has to change in order to get all nations of people here. They did massive raping, robbing, and murdering, and killings, but then his mind changed and said, oh, let's come together. But the Most High ain't forgot what you goddamn devils have done to his people, man. You don't pay because you in debt that you cannot pay, man. You gonna pay for it. So basically, we start from Habakkuk 2 and 12, talking about woe unto him that buildeth the city with blood, talking about the white folks, you Europeans. Then we looked at Habakkuk chapter 1. We started with verse 9. We stopped on verse 11. Okay, talking about also how the Europeans came to the New World. Alright? And there's many verses, many books, many chapters concerning the Bible on Thanksgiving. But I'm not going to go over all of them. Okay, I'm not. Beginning with the first verse. Lamentations is right after the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah wrote the book of Lamentations. Lamentation means to lament. Lament means to mourn and cry. And I can assure you that the indigenous people shedded many tears from you white folk, man. Raping and robbing and murdering and sending their children as slaves back to different countries, man. They shed a lot of tears, man. They caught a lot of hell with you white folks. And you're going to have to pay for that. And we don't celebrate Thanksgiving because it's a white man's holiday. And it's not the Israelites' holiday. As a matter of fact, we don't celebrate holidays at all. We celebrate holy days. So let's look at Lamentation 5. Verse 1, we'll stop on verse 8. There's Lamentations, okay? 5, 8 and bottom, okay? Lamentations chapter 5, and we'll begin with the first verse. Let's check it out. It says, Lamentations 5 and 1. Remember, O Yahweh. Now remember, O Lord, Yahweh, what is come upon us. Consider and behold all our reproach. Verse 2. Our inheritance is turned to strangers. Okay? That's what happened to the indigenous people, man. They are telling you in the book of Jeremiah, in the spirit, okay, that they are crying and weeping. Why? Because their inheritance was turned to strangers. Their land, their possession, their gold, okay, was turned into the hands of strangers, was turned into the hands of British Puritans, was turned into the hands of Spanish conquistadors, was turned into the hands of American settlers. Okay? It says in Lamentations 5 and 2, our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens. Because the European man was an alien in the eyes of the indigenous people when he came from the end of the earth. He was an alien. Different cultures, different languages that they spoke, different lifestyles that they lived, different apparel that they wore. They were strangers, man. They didn't know who the white folk was when they came to the New World. And it says what? Our inheritance have turned to strangers. Their inheritance, their belongings, okay, was turned to strangers. Their fruits, their vegetables, okay, all different type of a rare variety of fruits and many gold mines as well. Many mines of metals, the rivers, crystal clear spring water that they drunk was all turned to strangers. Who are those strangers? You goddamn white folk, man. Like it or not, cut the video off. But you gotta go forward. Verse 3 out of Lamentations chapter 5. We are orphans and fatherless, and our mothers are as widows. Okay, what is a widow? A widow is a woman without a husband, a woman without a spouse. That's a widow. What did the European Pilgrims do? When they murdered the indigenous men, they left their wives widows. When they slaughtered the men, they left their wives widows. This is Lamentations 5 and 3. Let's look at verse 4 out of Lamentations 5. We have drunken our water for money. Our wood is sold unto us. Yeah, because now the indigenous people, basically their land was stolen by Europeans. Now they gonna call them illegal immigrants when this was their land from the beginning. So how you Hispanic free, man? How you Latinos free? You better wake the hell up. You ain't free. You claiming to be free, but they stole your land, and on your own land they call you a legal immigrant. On your own land they build borders. The border of Mexico ain't gonna fine you and penalize you for crossing your own border, man. But yet instead you Latino, you Hispanics want to say you free, and the white man is innocent. He ain't innocent. This cracker, this goddamn devil murdered thousands of your people, man, and made you slaves of your own damn plantation. This is your land, you Hispanics, you natives. This is your land. But the white man call you illegal immigrants. He even call you aliens. And we know who the real aliens is in the Bible. Say we have drunken our water for money. They make you pay for the water that was once free. You native Indians, that spring, good flourishing water that came from the Cascades. When you didn't have to pay anything for it, they came over here and possessed it and now make you pay for it. Our wood is sold unto us when you had many pine trees and rich bark of the land. Now they sell. Now you have to buy your own wood from these people. Lamentations 5 and 5. Our necks are under persecution. Yeah, because you white folk, the reason why I'm saying this when it says our necks are under persecution, because all the indigenous people, necks was at the blade of you white folk. Necks was at the swords of you pilgrims. Necks was at the sword of you conquistadors. Necks was at the sword. Necks was at the sword of you American settlers. Necks was at the sword, man, of you Europeans. You slit many of the indigenous people's throats, not even knowing that you were persecuting the children of Israel. That's why I say our necks are under persecution. 100 million indigenous people necks was under persecution by you goddamn white folk, man. We ain't celebrating this holiday. We're celebrating this shit, man. Thanksgiving is not for you Israelites. It's not for you Negroes, Hispanics, and Native Indians. Verse 6 out of Lamentations 5. We have given the hand to the Egyptians and to the Assyrians to be satisfied with bread. Verse 7. Our fathers have sinned and are not, and we have borne their iniquities. Now what does it say in Lamentations 5 verse 7? Our fathers have sinned and are not, but we have borne their iniquities. Because you Hispanics are those indigenous people all over again, reincarnated in the regeneration. You are back on the earth again. Because you are your forefathers. You are back on the earth again. Alright? Servants, let's look at Lamentations 5 and 8. Servants have ruled over us. There is none that doeth deliver us out of their hand. Because it says, servants have ruled over us. Who's ruling over the so-called Negro, Hispanics, and natives? The goddamn white man. That's why I say servants have ruled over us. They rule this country, man. They run this world. You can go to Job 9:24 for that. The earth is given into the hands of you wicked white folk. You run this system. And we are servants to you white folk, man. And we are being oppressed and we sick of it. But the Most High picked you white folk to punish us. He picked you white folk to punish the nation of Israel. Because we broke his laws, statutes, and commandments. You said you came, you saw, and you conquered. The white man couldn't possess a goddamn thing if the Most High didn't give him the power to take the children of Israel down. The only reason why you've been so splendid in your glory, the only reason why you've been so mighty and looked at as being so emasculate is because of the power the Most High gave you, man. You didn't do this on your own. You white folk have your time and your season. And it's about over, man. Just like every nation had their time to rule. Concerning the book of Daniel, the Babylonians had their time. Okay? The Persians had their time. The Greeks had their time. The Romans had their time. The Africans, the Arabs. Every nation had their time. Last but not least, you white folk, time is about over. And we will possess the kingdom. And I want to close out with Isaiah 14:21. I'm not going to turn there. But if you look at Isaiah 14:21, it says, prepare slaughter. Prepare slaughter for the children, for the iniquities of their forefathers. Because you white folks are your forefathers, really. And you got to pay for what your forefathers did. And the Most High going to kill all you goddamn devils, man. You Edomites going to die by the Most High sword. You going to die by your Shem Yahweh power. And you going to die by the sword. For the atrocities that you have committed on the nation of Israel. You're going to die for celebrating this damn day for killing 100 million indigenous people, man. So I want to say shalom, brothers and sisters. Hope you was edified. Till next time. Peace.